Ashley Poling to serve as commissioners on the Postal Regulatory Commission for additional terms. And also Carmen Egina, right?
Egina, Senator.
Egina Gonzalez and Joseph Palmore to be associate judges on the District of Columbia Court of Appeals. Welcome to each of our nominees. Some of you I've known for a long time. And to your friends and family that are sitting back. If you're a friend or family of one of our nominees, would you raise your hand? All right. All right. Good. Thank you. If you're a friend or family and you don't want to be identified, would you? All right. If you have any, I don't know if we have, do you have any parents here? Any parents of these kids up here on, any parents? Yeah. Thank you for raising these young people and providing for them good values and good examples so that they may want to serve our country as they do. But we welcome all of our nominees and friends and family who've joined us for this hearing today. Congratulations on your nominations, and we thank you for your willingness to serve or to continue to serve in what are important roles. The Postal Regulatory Commission, also known affectionately as the PRC, People's Republic of, no, not really. Postal Regulatory Commission is a bipartisan body, as you may know, that provides independent oversight of the Postal Service. Postal Service plays an essential role connecting communities across our nation, and the PRC plays an essential role in ensuring that the Postal Service is effectively carrying out its public service mandate. Commissioners Fisher and Poling, I'm glad to see you both again. I talked with Senator Collins yesterday. We were had the opportunity at a celebration of the life of former Senator Joe Lieberman, and Susan and I were there, and a bunch of our colleagues were there. But we talked about you, and she said how proud she was of having worked for you, or was it the other way around? But we're grateful for your work on the commission, both of you, over the last 5 years. And I'd add that we're also glad to welcome you back as former committee staff members. Turning to our judicial nominees, Ms. Egina, Gonzalez, and Mr. Palmore, the District of Columbia Court of Appeals serves as the highest state-level appellate court here in our nation's capital. Currently, 2 of the court's 8 associate judge seats are vacant, slowing cases and delaying resolutions for the parties before the court. And we welcome, again, each of you. Today's hearing is an important opportunity for this committee to learn more about your qualifications and how you plan to serve in these important roles, and in some cases, how you've already served in these important roles. My script here says that I'm to recognize Senator Paul. He has not yet arrived, and I'm sure when he does, he'll be recognized and have the opportunity as the ranking member, senior Republican on the committee, to speak. I understand we got to swear in our witnesses. Is that true? Is that true? All right. I'm going to ask the 4 of you to stand, if you will. Senator. Thank you. Are you ready? I'm going to ask the 4 of you to raise your right hand, please. And do you swear that the testimony that you will give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Or you may be seated. Thank you. Not every committee, for those who are witnesses or who are guests here, not every committee swears in their witnesses. But when they have dubious backgrounds and we're not sure their character, we'll have them take the oath just to be sure. I'm kidding. All right. Our first nominee is a woman who needs no introduction in this room. Ann Fisher, nominated for a 2nd term as a commissioner on the Postal Regulatory Commission. She began her tenure as a commissioner in August of 2019 after being confirmed by the Senate by voice vote. Ms. Fisher has served in the federal government for 31 years since the age of 8. Is that right? No, that is a typo. During her 12 years on Capitol Hill, she held several senior roles, including Deputy Staff Director of this committee. She began her tenure at the Postal Regulatory Commission in 2007 as its Chief of Staff and later served as the Commission's Director of Public Affairs and Government Relations. Ms. Fisher is a graduate of the University of South Dakota with an MA in Economics, and she has a BS in Mathematics from Minnesota State University. Welcome, Ms. Fisher. You may proceed with your opening remarks. Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Senator Carper. I am honored to appear before you today as a nominee for a second term at the Postal Regulatory Commission. I'm also very grateful to President Biden and Leader McConnell for nominating me. Though my family wasn't able to join me today, I want to thank my husband, Dave, and my daughters, Dagny and Reagan, for their endless love and support. I would also like to thank my parents, Paul and Catherine Reifus of Yankton, South Dakota, who led the way for me as longtime civil servants. My dad is a counselor for the South Dakota Department of Labor, and my mom is a registered nurse for the South Dakota Department of Social Services. This May marked my 31st year of federal employment, all but 2 of those years involving work on postal issues. My career began in the U.S. Senate working for Senator Larry Pressler of South Dakota. I also had the privilege of working for Senators Thad Cochran of Mississippi and Susan Collins of Maine. It was during my final 4 years in the Senate that I served as Deputy Staff Director to Chairman Collins on the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee. Together, after countless postal reform hearings and endless bill negotiations, we were able to celebrate passage of the Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act of 2006. In 2007, I moved over to the Postal Regulatory Commission to serve as Chief of Staff to then Chairman Dan Blair. I later became the Commission's Public Affairs and Government Relations Director, and in 2019, I was appointed by President Trump to serve as a commissioner. Throughout my career, I have always found tremendous value in meeting with postal employees and various stakeholders within their own environment. This past year, I met with plant managers at postal processing and distribution centers in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and Fargo, North Dakota. I visited with postmasters at post offices in Sioux Falls, Harrisburg, and Brookings, South Dakota, Topeka, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri. In Topeka, I also toured a new style of facility called a Local Distribution Center, or LDC. At each of my stops, the postal employees I met were all very proud and hardworking people, several with decades of experience at the Postal Service under their belt. Most were familiar with the Postal Service's high-profile Delivering for America plan and happy to share the benefits of this plan with me. I sense their hope that the 10-year DFA plan would deliver what's been promised, long-sought financial stability for the Postal Service coupled with service excellence. The facts are that since 2007, the Postal Service has suffered a history of financial net losses while losing 48% of its mail volume. Incredibly, despite the Postal Service Reform Act's removal of the service's $57 billion liability for past due retiree health benefits, the service is still left with a net deficit of $23.1 billion in fiscal year 2023 due to ongoing financial issues. Together with my fellow commissioners, I work to foster a vital and efficient universal mail system. During my interview with committee staff in advance of today's hearing, I was asked how the Commission might help the Postal Service become financially stable. I responded that the Commission has the ability to provide the Postal Service with additional rate-setting authority, but that alone is not enough to return the service to a state of financial viability. Indeed, there are legitimate questions as to the effects of the much accelerated pace at which the Postal Service is increasing rates, given how much mail volume has and is being lost. A key aspect of the Postal Service's financial viability is cost containment and management. While the Commission has no direct role in Postal Service operations, it can provide transparency and analysis to ensure the Postal Service is doing its due diligence and being held accountable. Currently at the Commission, we have open dockets aimed at providing transparency into the DFA plan, inefficiencies in the processing of flat-shaped mail, and service performance measurement. Ultimately, though, the question of whether financial sustainability can be achieved while maintaining high levels of service will depend on sufficient demand for postal products. This is something that posts around the world are facing right now. It's my hope that the Commission's current review of the Postal Service's price elasticity of demand will allow for a better understanding of the issue. While my statement is focused on postal finances, the Commission also actively monitors, reports on, and makes recommendations regarding Postal Service performance. In certain parts of the country, DFA-related adjustments have caused historic service performance lows. I expect to hear on this issue from members of the committee this morning and welcome any questions you may have for me. Again, I thank President Biden for nominating me, and I would be honored to continue my role as one member of a team of commissioners dedicated to ensuring the transparency and accountability of the U.S. Postal Service. Thank you.
Ms. Fisher, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your service for quite a few years now, and both here as a member of our Senate family and more recently in serving on the Postal Regulatory Commission. Next is Ashley Poling, and also nominated for a second term on the commission, and we yield to you. Yeah, I think you began your tenure as a commissioner, I want to say it was in August 2019. August 2019, after being confirmed by a Senate vote. Previously, you served in several senior roles in the U.S. Senate, including Director of Governmental Affairs on this committee. Ms. Poling received her JD from Elon University School of Law in North Carolina, and her bachelor's degree, BA in English from the College of William and Mary, where our youngest son received his bachelor's degree. We have great memories visiting William and Mary there. And a number of my staff back in Delaware has just been admitted to law school there, so the bond continues to tighten. Wonderful place to get an education. Well, welcome, Ms. Poling. You may proceed with your opening remarks. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your years of service. You're recognized.
Thank you, Senator Carper. I'm also going to say thank you to Chairman Peters and Ranking Member Paul, who will probably be joining us later, as well as the other honorable members of the committee. Thank you for inviting me here today to discuss my nomination for a second term as a commissioner on the United States Postal Regulatory Commission. I would like to thank President Biden and his administration for placing their confidence in me, and I am honored to be here. I would also like to recognize my incredible support system of family, friends, mentors, and team members who are either here today in person or who are watching from all over the country. My parents, Lindy and Barkley, led incredible careers of their own as public servants, and they have taught me everything I know about doing all that I can to make a difference in the world through their amazing guidance. I am also particularly grateful for the powerful female friendships in my life, and thank those extraordinary women for their unshakable support. All of you have made a powerful difference in helping to shape the person I am today. Finally, I would like to thank the hardworking men and women of the United States Postal Service for their remarkable work in maintaining this essential public service. The Postal Service is a critical piece of national infrastructure and an important lifeline to individual customers and small businesses in all areas of our country that use it to conduct financial transactions, vote in local and national elections, receive essential medical items, and build up their home businesses. This organization visits every American address 6 days per week and has existed since the time of the Founding Fathers. And yet, in the last several years, the confidence of the American people and their public postal service has begun to slip. In 2021, the Postal Service lengthened service standards for a portion of mail and packages. Despite having more time to deliver the mail, service performance began declining in 2023 and has continued its decline this year. During my first term as a commissioner, I worked diligently with my colleagues on a variety of initiatives intended to help the mailing community, members of the public, and Congress better understand why service performance often did not meet their expectations. I believe transparency and accountability in this area is now more essential than ever. It is important to explain why service is so significant to me personally. Before coming to the Commission, I worked on postal policy for United States senators representing rural America. Much of what I learned about the importance of the Postal Service in rural communities came from my time on the ground in the states of Montana, North Dakota, and Michigan, talking to constituents about how much they rely on postal services, including access to their local post office. For that reason, I have also been committed to helping resolve issues with suspended post offices. While some post offices are suspended due to extreme weather events or safety issues and reopened fairly quickly, Others remain in the purgatory of suspended status for years or even decades. While the Commission does not have any direct authority over post office suspensions, my colleagues and I have provided substantial transparency regarding this issue through our annual compliance determination. If confirmed for a second term, I will commit to continuing to hold the Postal Service accountable for resolving post office suspensions in a timely manner and in accordance with the law. Despite the ongoing decline in mail volume, the Postal Service delivers nearly half of the world's mail. Total mail and package volume remains in the billions of pieces every year, and the postal stakeholder community continues to be strong, accounting for over $1 trillion of commerce. I would be remiss if I did not mention the important role that the Commission plays in giving a voice to Americans' concerns about the future of this essential public service. Frequent engagement with the whole postal community remains crucial. I would also like to express my belief in the importance of collaboration and bipartisanship in creating and enforcing effective postal regulation. As I'm sure all of the committee members here know, there is no Republican or Democratic way to deliver the mail. I pledge to continue working with my colleagues in a bipartisan fashion to provide critical oversight of the Postal Service for the benefit of all Americans. We stand at a meaningful moment in postal history. As the Postal Service pursues extensive nationwide reforms to its network and operations, it is critical that the Commission hold the Postal Service accountable for meeting its statutory obligations throughout these changes, including maintaining high-quality service. There is no more important time than now for a strong and engaged postal regulator. While my colleagues and I have accomplished a lot during the last 5 years, there are still substantial changes left to meet and much work to be done to preserve the vital institution that is the United States Postal Service. I thank you for your time and for considering my nomination. I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Yeah. Thanks, Ms. Pullen. We've been joined by the real chairman of this committee, Senator Peters. Before I turn the gavel back over to him, I want to thank you both for your presence today and for your service on the commission. People say to me, why am I? I've always been really interested in the Postal Service. The last Vietnam veteran serving in the U.S. Senate, and I remember 3 tours over there. And the best day of the week was the day the mail came. And for my colleagues and me then, it was important. For those men and women that are serving in uniform today around the world, they still get mail, and it's a great lifeline. And Senator, go ahead. I'm okay. Senator Peters is going to go back to vote on another committee, so you're stuck with me for a little bit longer. But I think we're going to turn next to Carmen Aguina. It's pronounced Harji. Aguina and Gonzalez. Ms. Gonzalez is currently counsel at Kaplan, Hecker, and Fink, LLP, where she handles complex civil litigation and appellate matters. In addition to maintaining a pro bono practice representing individuals in nonprofit organizations, she also serves as director of the Howard University School of Law Civil Rights Clinic. Previously, Ms. Aguina Gonzalez served as a senior staff attorney for the ACLU Immigrants' Rights Project. Or earlier in her legal career, I'm told she worked for the law firm Jones Day and for the ACLU of Southern California. Ms. Gonzalez also earned her BA magna cum laude from Harvard University and her JD magna cum laude from New York University School of Law. That's pretty impressive. When I was in school, I could barely spell those words or just pronounce them, but very impressive credentials. After law school, she clerked for Judge, I want to say Kyo, is it Kyo? Judge Kyo A. Matsumoto on U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of New York, and for Judge Stephen Reinhardt on the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. And Justice Sonia Sotomayor, never heard of her, on the Supreme Court of the United States. But we welcome you, Ms. Aguina Gonzalez. You may proceed with your opening remarks.
Thank you, Senator Carper. Good morning. I am honored and humbled to appear before you today as you consider my nomination to be an Associate Judge of the District of Columbia Court of Appeals. I thank you for holding this hearing. I also wish to thank the District of Columbia Judicial Nomination Commission and its chair, the Honorable Marie Johns, for recommending me to the White House, and I thank President Joseph Biden for nominating me. I also wish to take a moment to thank the Chief Judge and the Associate Judges of the District of Columbia Court of Appeals, who are actually here today, for being so generous
Well,
with
would
their
they
time.
raise their hands? Have them raise their hands. All right, back of the cheap seats. All right, go ahead.
For being so generous with their time throughout this process. I am the person and the lawyer I am today because of the people in my life who have supported me along the way, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge them. First, I want to thank my husband, Jason Alcorn, who has been my best friend and partner for over 20 years.
Ask Jason to raise his hand. Go ahead. All right, thank you.
For your love and constant encouragement, I can never thank you enough. To my children, mis nenes, Lucas and Gabriela, who are here as well,
Would you ask them to raise their hands? How old are they?
9 and 4.
Oh, good. Okay. Welcome.
You fill my days with joy and laughter. It is the greatest privilege of my life to be your mom, and I am so proud to have you here with me today. Next, I wish to thank my parents, Dr. Luis Iguina and Dr. Gloria Gonzalez, who traveled from Puerto Rico to be here.
Would you ask them to raise their hands? Bienvenido.
For over 40 years, my father worked as a doctor at the San Juan VA Medical Center.
The VA Center?
The VA Center.
Good for you. Thank you for your service.
Caring for U.S. veterans in Puerto Rico. And my mother's own medical career was dedicated to caring for children. Thank you both for instilling in me the values of hard work and dedication to family. To my siblings, Antonio and Elena, one of whom is also here.
Which one?
Antonio,
Antonio, big brother, little brother?
big brother.
All right.
Thank you both for being the best cheerleaders a little sister could ever have. To my husband's parents, the Reverend Dr. Paul and Shodi Alcorn, you exemplify a life centered around faith and service. And to my extended family in Puerto Rico, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Maine, and my friends and colleagues all over the country, thank you for your unconditional love and support. As I sit here today, my mind is on my grandmother, who raised 3 children on her own and worked her way through law school by attending classes at night. As a young girl, I sat by her side in her small office and watched as she helped her neighbors. I learned from my grandmother that to practice law is a privilege and to serve our community is the highest calling. Those values have led me throughout my career and have been shared by so many of the wonderful lawyers I've had the privilege to work for and with. I had the great privilege to serve as a law clerk for 3 remarkable jurists, Judge Kiyo Matsumoto, the late Judge Stephen Reinhardt, and Justice Sonia Sotomayor. Each in their own ways taught me what it means to be dedicated to the fair and impartial administration of the law and committed to that vital promise engraved over the entrance of the Supreme Court, equal justice under law. If I am fortunate enough to be confirmed, I very much look forward to upholding those values as an associate judge on the District of Columbia Court of Appeals. My own career in the law has been broad. In addition to my clerkships, I have worked in small and large nonprofit organizations and law firms and taught at a large Midwest public university and a private HBCU here in DC. These experiences have afforded me extraordinary opportunities to work on matters presenting questions about corporate law, statutory construction, administrative law, criminal law, and more. Each opportunity has fueled my love for the law and my respect for the institutions charged with upholding it, which now in turn fuels my passion for judicial service. I wish to serve as an associate judge on the District of Columbia Court of Appeals to serve the community of Washington, D.C. I carry with me the lessons of my grandmother helping her neighbors, my parents caring for those who most needed care, and the judges that I have worked for. I became a lawyer because I wanted to be of service, and courts are integral to that work, not only because of their role in maintaining the rule of law, but also in ensuring that every person who walks through the courthouse doors is treated fairly and with dignity. It would be an honor to serve the District of Columbia in that vital role. Thank you again for the opportunity to appear before you today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, and thanks for the folks you've mentioned, grandmother, other members of your family, other folks that you have work with, who have helped prepare you for this moment. I used to be governor of Delaware, and as governor, I was privileged to nominate people to serve on a variety of courts, including Court of Chancery, which has an international reputation, Supreme Court, and others. I know how important the role of the judiciary is in our state, and certainly here in the district. And for too long, these seats have not been filled, properly, and they've been in some cases left vacant for not just months but years, which is, I think, is shameful. And the Senate has a responsibility to meet all of us, Democrats and Republicans, and to fill these seats with confirmed folks. And we've been joined here by a senator from California, Senator Butler, who's just returned from a bipartisan, bicameral congressional delegation trip to Mexico, where she met with the president of Mexico and the newly elected president-elect in Mexico, a woman. That would be a first, and who's actually Jewish. That would be a first. And Senator Butler, how was that CODAL?
It was an incredibly enlightening experience. I had a wonderful time learning from the leaders of Mexico and spending time with our U.S. ambassador, former Senator Ken Salazar. I think the partnership that we can build between the leaders of both countries, targeting the root causes of migration and working together on issues of border security are all great opportunities in front of us. Thank you for leading the CODAL, Senator Carter.
It was great. We'll do it again. Maybe the next time we'll actually make it to Colombia, where we're flying military air. And the Army's providing military air support of our congressional delegation, or 11 of us and some staff, and we made it as far as the first part of our journey, which was to meet with the leadership of Mexico, one of our strongest partners and our most valuable relationships. And the airplane that flew us down to Mexico was downed and could not make it to Colombia. And so we had to cut short. It's like a day-night doubleheader. And we made it to the first part of the doubleheader, but we'll have to go back to Colombia some other time. But thanks for being a big part of that and building an even stronger relationship. Senator Peters is going to be joining us shortly. But before he does, I think we may get to hear from our final nominee, and that's Joseph Palmore. And he's nominated to be Associate Judge on the District of Columbia Court of Appeals. Mr. Palmore is currently a partner at the law firm of Morrison Forster, LLP, where he co-chairs the firm's appellate and Supreme Court practice. Previously, Mr. Palmore served as an assistant to the Solicitor General of the United States Department of Justice and held senior legal positions at the Federal Communications Commission. He received his A.B. magna cum laude. Boy, there's some smart people here here at this table. He was waitlisted at Delaware. He was waitlisted and he went on to receive his A.B. magna cum laude from Harvard and a J.D. and M.A. from the University of Virginia. After law school, Mr. Palmore served as a law clerk for Judge John Gleason on the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of New York, Judge Dennis Jacobs on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, and Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the U.S. Supreme Court. Welcome, Mr. Palmore. Good to see you, and you and your family and other guests. You may proceed with your opening remarks.
Thank you, Senator Carper. I am honored to appear before you today as you consider my nomination to be an Associate Judge on the District of Columbia Court of Appeals. I thank you and your staff for holding the hearing. I also want to thank the District of Columbia Judicial Nomination Commission and its chair, the Honorable Marie Johns, for recommending me to the White House. I want to thank the Chief Judge of the court and the judges of the court for being so welcoming through this process and for coming today. And I'm also grateful to President Biden for nominating me. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge some important people in my life, several of whom are here today. I cannot be more fortunate to be married to Dr. Tara Palmore. I wouldn't be sitting here before you today without Tara's steadfast support and encouragement.
Would you ask her to raise her hand? Welcome. How are you? Thanks for your willingness to share this fellow with all of us, the people of the District of Columbia.
We have 3 sons, 2 of whom are here today.
No, would they raise their hands?
Yes, Simon and Teddy are here.
Simon and Teddy, they're big boys.
Charlie is, yes. Charlie is away at summer camp, so couldn't make it.
All right.
All 3 of them make me proud every day.
We have 3 sons as well. People ask me what I'm proudest of in my life, and I always say raising 3 boys with a big assist from their mom. So,
My mother, Sandra Palmore, is also here today.
where? Welcome. Hi, Mom.
Her status as my biggest fan gave me the confidence to become the first lawyer in our family. She also taught me the importance of education. She was not able to complete her college education right out of high school because her family couldn't afford it. But she went back to school at night when I was a boy. Attending my own mother's college graduation at the University of Texas at San Antonio is one of my proudest childhood memories. My father, Russell Palmore, passed away on December 28th, 2023, just as the Judicial Nomination Commission process was beginning. Despite the loss, I decided to proceed because I knew that's what my dad would have wanted. He was immensely proud of my professional accomplishments and told me over the years he thought I should consider becoming a judge. I've been an appellate litigator for more than 20 years. I served as Deputy General Counsel of the Federal Communications Commission, where I oversaw all litigation involving the agency. I then served as an assistant to the Solicitor General, where I had the honor of representing the United States before the Supreme Court. My docket was diverse and split between civil and criminal cases. For the last nearly 10 years, I have served as co-chair of the appellate and Supreme Court practice at Morrison Foerster. I've represented clients in federal and state appeals all over the country. I've also engaged in substantial pro bono work and now chair the firm's pro bono committee. I'd like to finish my remarks by noting where my legal career started, by clerking for Judge Dennis Jacobs on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, for John Gleeson on the Eastern District of New York, and for the Honorable Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the United States Supreme Court. They modeled for me what it is to be an excellent judge: hard work, fidelity to precedent, mastery of the factual record, respect for all parties, timely decision-making, and clearly written opinions. I've lived in the District of Columbia for more than 20 years and raised my family here. I love this city and its people. With your advice and consent, it would be an honor for me to return to public service in a new role as an associate judge on the District of Columbia Court of Appeals. Thank you for the opportunity to appear here today, and I welcome your questions.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for that testimony. We've been rejoined by our chairman, the real chairman of the committee. And before I turn it over to Senator Peters, Senator Marshall, welcome. Glad that you could join us today. Again, just to say to you and to Ms. Gina Gonzalez, how important I think it is to fill these vacancies on the bench. I mentioned earlier, Mr. Chairman, that in our state, and I know in the state of Michigan, the governors are very much involved in nominating people. Those nominations never come before the Congress. So folks get nominated, it goes through the approval process in Michigan, Delaware, wherever, and the folks serve on the bench. And to have vacancies that may be not just months, but in some cases years, that have been filled, justice delayed is justice denied. And we can do a better job. We need to do a better job. And I want to applaud this man right here and his staff for making sure that we do something about it, not just talk about it, but actually do something about it. And thank you. And with that, happy to turn the gavel back over. And thank you for letting me return to my previous glory as the glory days as chairman of the Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. Good luck, everybody. I leave you in very, very good hands. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Senator Carper. Thank you for doing an amazing job. You've done this before, clearly, not your first rodeo. So thank you for helping out. And as you can tell, it's a crazy day. We're running around. All of our members are trying to multitask, and sometimes that goes better than other times. So appreciate your indulgence. There are 3 questions the committee asks of every nominee, and I'm going to ask each of you to respond briefly with yes or no. We're going to start with Ms. Fisher. We'll work down the dais there. First, is there anything you are aware of in your background that might present a conflict of interest with the duties of the office to which you have been nominated?
No.
No.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
And second, do you know of anything personal or otherwise that would in any way prevent you from fully and honorably discharging the responsibilities of the office to which you have been nominated?
No.
No.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
And lastly, do you agree without reservation to comply with any request or summons to appear and testify before any duly constituted committee of Congress if you are confirmed?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Senator.
Very good. So my first question, and Commissioner Polling, and by the way, welcome back to the committee. From your extensive experience here, this is not an unfamiliar place for you to be. So my first question is for you as well as Commissioner Fisher. The Postal Regulatory Commission plays a critical role in conducting oversight of the Postal Service, including prices, on-time delivery service, and whether the Postal Service is providing prompt, reliable, and efficient services to every community across our country and to every address across our country as well. So my question for both of you is, what steps have you taken to ensure the Postal Service maintains a high level of service and accountability for customers? And if confirmed for a second term, how would you continue to ensure the Commission acts on as a stronger regulator in conducting oversight for the Postal Service? For this one, I'll start with you, Ms. Fisher, and Ms. Polling after that. Okay. Ms. Fisher.
Thank you, Chairman Peters. The Commission, while it can't force the Postal Service to make its service better, we certainly can provide an extensive amount of oversight and transparency in this area. We do, on an annual basis, collect their service performance information from across the country and make that public and make recommendations as to how we believe they could improve upon it via our annual compliance determination. We also collect and report on quarterly data and most recently weekly data according to the Postal Service's own website. But what we are doing now that I believe is most important is we've opened a docket to look at how they measure their service performance. This is an area where we can do something. We have been examining, or we're in the beginning of examining the extent to which their numbers are accurate, reliable, and representative of the system as a whole. The DFA has made significant changes to the way the Postal Service transports the mail, moving it around the times of delivery, and we believe that the service measurement system may not be as accurate as it had been previously. So the docket is just in the early stages. If we get to a point where I believe we find that it is not representative of the system as a whole, we could ask for modifications to the way that they measure the service performance. And I am committed to staying on top of this. Service is of paramount importance to members of Congress, and it has not been where it needs to be.
Very good. Thank you. Ms. Polling?
Thank you, Chairman. It's good to see you and to be back with you all here in the Senate. Excuse me, to be back here in the Senate. Yeah, so I guess where I would start is, first of all, I know that there has been a lot of frustration from you all on the committee with the level of service that has been occurring since 2023, and I really do appreciate that and understand it, having worked for senators from rural America on my time with the committee, and also just understanding that, you know, you need to go back to your constituents and be able to tell them where their mail is. So I would say a few things that I think the Commission has been doing really well, particularly on the service front. We do have limited authorities, but I think we're doing as much as we can with what we have. In April of 2023, we opened a Delivering for America PI docket. And in that docket, that's where we're able to examine the scope of what the Postal Service is doing through this plan. As mentioned earlier, this is one of the most extensive changes we've ever seen to the transportation of mail and packages around the country. So oversight and transparency is critical. So we've opened that docket. We've asked a series of questions through it. Something I think that's really innovative that the Commission has done more recently is we actually issued our first show cause order for an advisory opinion. We've never done that before in the Commission's history. And in that order, we were asking the Postal Service to either submit an advisory opinion to us, and just to clarify what that is, whenever there's a nationwide or substantially nationwide change in service, the Postal Service is supposed to submit one of those to us at the Commission for our review. And when we filed the show cause order, we gave the Postal Service a period of time to get back to us and either file one or to tell us why they were not filing one. Unfortunately, they did not file one. I am hopeful they still will. I know that is something that is still being talked about, but I actually do believe that that advisory opinion process would be the best way for us to continue our service oversight over the Postal Service. And I think it will really provide, I think, an ability to have an independent, neutral analysis of what is going on with this plan. We really need to understand what's happening with it, and I really believe that we can do a thorough job with our team of experts at the Commission. You also asked, Chairman, about what would we do in the future as a regulator. I think, we've got a lot on our plates. We're trying to do more and more with data and transparency. I'm really excited about some of the dashboards we have at the Commission that we've been working on since coming to the Commission and appreciating in my former role as a congressional staffer how important accessible reports are. I've worked really especially on bringing more mapping and things like that to our reports and making sure infographics are more understandable and just really making sure that people can really take away something in a few minutes from something they're seeing on our website. In addition, you talked about rate making. That's a huge part of what we do. Everyone has heard in the postal community and has been talking about the number of rate increases and how they've been going up. And we've heard a lot from the mailing stakeholder community. I can tell you, we talk to them often, and that is actually one of the biggest reasons why I have very much supported us opening our review of the market dominant rate making system 2 years early. That was a unanimous decision by the Commission, and I think we're all looking forward to examining that. We actually just received our first public comments in that docket. In addition, the Postal Service continues to have volume losses and to have significant financial problems. So I really think this will be a good opportunity for us at the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Carper, you're recognized for your questions.
Yeah, thanks very, very much. I mentioned I'm the last Vietnam veteran serving in the U.S. Senate, and kind of relates to my great affection and interest in the postal issues. We used to fly 12-hour missions. We fly them off the coast of Vietnam and Cambodia. And at the end of the missions, we come back, debrief, and my crew, 13-man crew, would oftentimes have dinner together, chow together at an outdoor cafe on the base where we were located. And they had Armed Forces radio piped in on the speakers so we could actually hear music from America. And one of the groups that was pretty big at the time was a British group, I think, called Led Zeppelin. I think they had a very successful album called The Song Remains the Same. I'm channeling that song as I sit here with the Postal Service. The song remains the same. Senator Peters and I have worked for years, along with members of our staff, along with you, to try to make sure that we have a Postal Service as one that we can be proud of, that provides not just mail services for folks that are deployed around the world in our armed forces, to meet the services for our constituents and across the country. And one of the things that we do, every one of us in the Senate and the House as well, we all have constituent services operations, as you know, and we take a lot of pride in our constituent services operation. We actually send out a survey at the beginning of every month to constituents who contacted my offices in Delaware and ask them about the quality of the service they're getting from, it could be from the VA, it could be the Department of Transportation, it could be from in the Postal Service. And the Postal Service usually leads the hit parade in unhappiness that we measure from our constituents in terms of folks that are complying, reaching out to us by phone, by mail, by email, to say that the service is not what it should be. And we have worked on legislation to try to help, as you know, to try to stabilize the operation of the Postal Service and their finances. And we're still facing a situation where the quality of the service is evaluated by people who contact my office every month. The quality of service is not getting better, in many cases getting worse. And we find that we're losing money, maybe more than ever. That's not a good combination. And it's not all on the Postal Service. It's not all on the people who work there. It's not all on the Commission. It's not all on us on this committee. But we've got to find a way to a better place for the people we serve, and frankly, for the people who work for the Postal Service. But with that having been said, could both of you, Ms. Fisher, Ms. Pauling, could you share your insights on strategies the Commission could adopt to generally improve the financial stability of the Postal Service? How do you envision pushing for innovation and improvements in efficiency within the current regulatory framework to help the Postal Service better serve its customers? please. Ms. Fisher, would you go first?
I don't know that we could alone improve the financial viability of the Postal Service. You laid out what is a significant problem. Their volume continues to decline, both in the market-dominant and competitive area. Market-dominant volume has been decreasing steadily for several years, and this past year, at 9% decrease. It never rebounded fully from COVID. Competitive had been growing, but this past year it decreased by 2%. Despite the relief of a $57 billion liability that the PSRA accomplished, which many, I think, thought would be a big piece of solving the Postal Service's financial problems, they still have a tremendous amount of unfunded liabilities. A huge loan from the Federal Financing Bank, workers' compensation, and continued CSRS and FERS liabilities. We can assist them to a small degree through rate authority, but much of the rest depends upon the public's desire for their product. And as I just laid out, that's waning. At base, I wonder if it's time to potentially revisit the entire business model of the Postal Service. That's something the Commission made several recommendations to the Congress several years ago. It's a tough nut to crack. You need to try and discern what the public truly wants and needs from their Postal Service. A lot of different countries are looking at this right now. Some are considering days of delivery. Some are considering lowering service standards. I'm not saying that's the answer here. Lowered service standards certainly doesn't seem to be what the American public wants, but these are things that it may be time to revisit.
Okay, thanks very much. And Ms. Polling, just take about a minute and respond, and then well, I'm going to say one other thing and turn it back over to our chairman. Go ahead, just 1 minute, please.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Carper.
And I'll ask you to respond in greater length and responses for the record. Thanks. Go ahead.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you so much. I'll just quickly say then, I think when it comes, you asked primarily about financial stability of the Postal Service.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the greatest way that the Commission can have an impact on that is probably through our rate-making authority. I mentioned earlier that we have opened our review of the rate-making system 2 years earlier. And I really do think, the goal of the system is really to find ways, right, to find this balance between keeping the Postal Service self-sustaining and also finding incentives to reduce costs. And so I think that's something we'll be able to examine in greater length as we go into this new rate-making review. I also think it's important to say that in our recent rate order that we put out, we actually did, put in there that we do believe the Board of Governors should exercise their discretion when they are raising these rates. And I do believe this system will give us a chance to really look at this in greater detail, but that is something that we have said. And again, I think one thing that is a real benefit of this enacted system from 2021, the one we're currently under, is that we do have the ability to revisit it every 5 years, if not earlier. So I think that's something we're doing right now. And the last thing I'll say is we do have a financial report at the Commission where we're really able to examine the revenue and costs of the Commission on an annual basis. Yeah. And I'll be happy to give you even more in my questions for the record.
Before I turn the gavel back over to our chairman, before he pulls it out of my hand, one of the things we've tried to do for years is find how are other, the Postal Service is the only entity in the country that goes to basically every door, every postal box in the country, at least 5-6 days a week. And how do we take that and make that part of the business model that's actually generates enough revenues to be sustaining? One of the things that we hear from time to time is vote by mail. And some states they have a fair amount of vote by mail. In other cases, not so much. I think I felt forever that there's actually revenues opportunities for the Postal Service through vote by mail. And frankly, hopefully at the same time we'll get more people to vote. And that would be a good combination. Vote by mail, increase revenues of the Postal Service, and make sure more people are reading the constitutional responsibilities as citizens. With that, I first return it to the chairman, and thank you so much for letting me sit in your seat for a while.
Well,
thanks.
Thank you, Senator Carper, as always. Senator Butler, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me take the first minute because I do think there's a little bit of a pattern that you're going to see in our questioning from the committee. Let me just at the top of my remarks just congratulate Ms. Gonzalez and Mr. Palmore, their families, their friends. And none of us get in this room by ourselves. And to just know that it is that you all are being supported both physically and here in person, also virtually online, and maybe your son is thinking about you at summer camp. If he's anything like my daughter, probably not. But just congratulations to you all. Congratulations on your nominations by the president. Thank you for your service that has earned you that nomination. You, hopefully, if confirmed, will be an incredibly important part of the judicial system in one of the busiest, most backlogged communities in the country. And so your service is definitely in high demand and needed, definitely appreciated and seen here, even if you don't get a lot of questions directed your way. With that, I'll turn my questions back to the conversation at hand. The Postal Service, as you both know, Ms. Fisher and Ms. Poling, it is one of the most present ways in which our government shows up at the door of our constituents. And for states like mine, California, who today are experiencing thousands of acres on fire, it is an incredibly important service and lifeline for so many. And when Mr. DeJoy, Postmaster DeJoy, was here just a few months ago, he and I had an exchange about a number of post offices in my state that have been closed for several reasons. Nevertheless, it has been, in some instances, years since those post offices have been reopened. And it remains an critically important point of conversation for me in a way in which I can serve my constituents. And so I'm trying to get to, really quickly, both of you have been serving on the PRC. And so what I'd love to hear about is, what have you been doing to ensure that the needs of rural Americans have been considered in the plan and execution of the strategy that Mr. DeJoy is and the leadership of the Postmaster General have been deploying to ensure that those communities aren't overlooked? People think about California as this big urban place. It is one of the most diverse states in the country relative to language as well as geography. And so talk to me about your service up till now focused on rural communities. And I'm happy to start, Ms. Poling, with you this time.
Thank you so much, Senator Butler. Appreciate the question. So rural America is near and dear to my heart. When I was working here on the committee, I actually worked for senators from North Dakota and Montana, Senator Heidi Heitkamp and Senator John Tester. So I have spent a lot of time out in those states really connecting with constituents and understanding what it is that they're dealing with. And the post office matters everywhere. I always think that's important to say. But there is a special connection in rural America that is different, I think. And it really is such a central part of those communities. So rural America has been front of mind for me ever since starting at the commission, because it was a huge part of my work here in the Senate for those senators. And I think, we are always, service is something, I've talked about it a little bit today with what we're doing with our public inquiry docket on the Delivering for America plan, making sure we're asking questions where we can there. I already mentioned, I think an advisory opinion does need to be filed, and I think that gives us a chance to really assess what is going on all over the country, especially in rural America, to your point. But in terms of something I think personally that I've done at the commission, specifically related to rural America, several years ago, the Postal Service lengthened service standards for portions of first-class mail and periodicals. I supported unanimous advisory opinion for the commission, but I did provide an additional commentary. And I provided that commentary because the Postal Service did not reach out to examine the impact that this lengthening of service standards would have on rural Americans. They also did not look at how it would impact the elderly or low-income Americans. So I wrote a separate statement about that and saying that that was something I really felt had to be looked at. That's something that still concerns me to this day. We have to understand what's going on in these different communities. So I can tell you that I will remain dedicated to this. I really hope we have the opportunity to assess what's going on in this plan through an advisory opinion, and I really think the commission can contribute greatly to your understanding of what's going on in California, but all over the country.
I agree with you. Every state has a rural part of the state or multiple rural parts of the state, including California. I've visited over the course of my career a number of different places, a small town in Wyoming that was served just maybe 3 times a week because of the level of rural it was. When I worked for Senator Collins, there were people who lived on islands and received mail somewhat sporadically by boat. I traveled with my family down into the Grand Canyon once. We were backpacking, and I saw donkeys carrying mail down to the base of the Grand Canyon. So the Postal Service makes it happen, but I am concerned as the Postal Service evolves and under the Delivering for America plan, that not enough attention is being paid to how that plan may impact the most remote areas of the country. They have a new service called Local Transportation Optimization, which has changed the amount of times that the postal trucks will visit the different post offices. The further out a post office is, the less it may be visited and have the mail picked up or delivered. That would directly impact the rural citizens. So I think your concern on behalf of your own constituents, but every member who has rural citizens has the right to be concerned. They are the ones in the most rural areas who are most reliant upon the Postal Service. They may not have an Amazon delivery driver or UPS or FedEx stopping by on a regular basis. So that's a heart for me as someone who grew up in South Dakota, is very aware of rural needs of citizens. I keep my eye on this, and I am committed to continuing to doing so.
Thank you, Senator Butler. Senator Marshall, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll start with Ms. Poling. This is your second term, I believe. Over the last 4 years, Congress has given USPS $120 billion. How much money will we lose this year, and what's the projection for the fiscal year right now?
I appreciate the question. I think probably the best people to ask that question is the Postal Service. I want to make sure I get you the right number. We lost $6.5 billion last year, the Postal Service, which is very concerning.
Why wouldn't I ask you that question? You feel like that's not a fair question?
No, I just want to make sure I'm getting you the right information. So if that's okay, Senator, I'd love to get back to you on that.
Okay. What's the fiscal projection for this year of losses?
I think we're already at about 4.5 right now.
Do they present a budget to the commissioners and then you go through it once a month, item by item?
That's a really good question. That is not how the process works currently. We do, in terms of our budget process, we are putting together, as you know from the PSRA, our budget process changed at the commission. So we actually are right now in the throes of our budget as it stands, and we present that budget to the Board of Governors, and that's how we work on our budget for the commission. But no, they do not present us with a budget every month. We do meet quarterly with the Postmaster General.
And they go through a budget then?
They do give us basic updates then, yes.
Basic?
Yeah.
Okay.
We do that on, oh, I'm so sorry.
I've never been a part of a board where I didn't feel a responsibility for that budget and going through it month by month. But that's not, I get it. Is the overall customer satisfaction in the Postal Services the past 3 or 4 years, what's the trend?
I would say in terms of satisfaction, I think it's been very frustrating these past few years.
So it's the wrong direction?
Yes.
And do you all review the I'm a doctor, the customer satisfaction?
I understand.
Customer satisfaction?
Yes, we do. We actually have a customer experience metric in our, we have a 280304 report that examines service performance in greater detail than our annual compliance determination, which is our statutorily required report that is filed filed every year. We do look at customer experience there. And then constantly, right, we are looking at service metrics throughout the country. We do get quarterly service reporting from the Postal Service.
Thank
We're
you.
really, oh,
Thank you, that's
Okay.
good. I just want to make
Okay.
sure you're reviewing them.
Yes.
Ms. Fisher, Kansas is now the 6th worst in the country when it comes to on-time mail delivery, sixth worst, and it sounds like we're not the only state. So certainly it's a crescendo of concerns from my folks. There's been a recent Inspector General report that audited their operations. They address staffing shortages. We don't need to go into detail on those, but they describe a lack of compliance with standard operating procedures, a lack of compliance with standard operating procedure. If you were approved for this position, what could you do to hold those people accountable to get them to follow the standard operating procedures?
Unfortunately, those are operational issues that are solely under the control of the Postal Service. But my hope is that they will file, as they have promised, an advisory opinion with us that will allow us to look in much greater detail at all the major operational changes they are making throughout the country. I was down in Topeka a couple months ago and had the great fortune to land on the day a series of twisters made its way through the city, which was something new for me. But I visited the local distribution center, which was impressive, but they also spoke of problems they were having with delays, hiring shortages, et cetera. I think there's a great lack of communication from the top down.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll go back to Ms. Poling. How can you impact that they're not even following their standard operating procedures? Why haven't you impacted that so far?
thank you, Senator. I would echo, for us, right, we are the regulator, they are the operator, so there is definitely a distance between what we can do with some of the things in terms of operations. What we can do is provide transparency and accountability. So to the extent that
So tell me about the accountability. What does that look like? How do you hold them accountable?
Well, the powers we do have at the commission exist through our reporting, primarily through our annual compliance determination. That is statutorily mandated by Congress. That was established under the 2006 bill. That allows us to issue directives when the Postal Service is not following things as they should. Now, primarily, that deals with rates and service. When it deals with standard operating procedures, I think that really is getting squarely into their jurisdiction with operations.
So who do they answer to then? They don't answer to Congress, they don't answer to you. These people that you're describing, why don't they, who do they answer to?
I think it's an excellent question, Senator, and frankly, I think there should be a lot more oversight of the Postal Service. I think that there needs to be, we've experienced it. I'll use service as an example. I know it's been impacting you. I've read about the audit, right, in Kansas City. I understand that you all are dealing with that, and it's very frustrating for your constituents. As I mentioned, I work for Senators for Rural America myself. But that's somewhere, right, where it might be impactful to allow the commission to potentially have more authority when it comes to the advisory
That would
opinion
require
process.
legislation?
It would, indeed.
Okay.
Yes.
Would you agree with me, I think this goes to either one, Ms. Fisher or Ms. Poling, if we have time left to answer the question, that volumes are going down and there's worse customer satisfaction, which leads to less volumes, which leads to worse customer satisfaction. This is a circular problem.
Absolutely.
So at the end of the day, if you have a good product, the customer satisfaction is going to go up. So it's not fair to just blame. I mean, we have to have accountability, accept the responsibility is what I'm trying to say. Ms. Poling, would you agree with that? That we, the Postal Service, has to accept responsibility for the decreased volume because of customer satisfaction issues.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's something that really needs to be looked at in depth. And I think the commission, I know I've said this several times, but I think our ability to analyze what's going on with delivering for America through an advisory opinion would be an excellent way for us to understand what's going on and what the impact is on customers all over this country.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would just ask for an opportunity to sit down with your staff and our staff and help me to understand a little bit better how we could make the Postal Service more accountable to somebody. It sounds like right now that they're not accountable to anybody.
We'd be happy to have that
Thank you.
conversation. We'll look forward to that, Senator. Senator Hassan, you're recognized for your questions.
Well, thank you, Chair Peters, and I want to thank you and the ranking member for holding a very important hearing. To our nominees, thank you for your willingness to serve. And I want to say to Ms. Gonzalez and Mr. Palmore, I too am going to be asking questions of the Postal Service, but please know how grateful I am to you for your willingness to share your expertise and your skill. And congratulations to you and your families for stepping up to serve in this way. It's really important. Let's start with questions to Ms. Fisher and Ms. Poling. Earlier this year, the Postal Service announced its plans to move some operations from the Manchester, New Hampshire processing and distribution plant to Boston, which would cost employees their jobs and likely slow down delivery times. It may be just 50 miles from southern New Hampshire to Boston, but I can tell you what the traffic looks like, and it's not good. Several other states are facing the same potential challenge of postal operations in their states being moved out of state. In response to pressure from Congress, Postmaster General DeJoy announced that he would pause operational changes until January of 2025. I continue to have concerns about any future plans to move operations from Manchester to Boston. As current members of the Postal Regulatory Commission, what have you done to conduct oversight of Postmaster General DeJoy's mail processing facility reviews, including the one in Manchester, New Hampshire? And we'll start with you, Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Senator. We have not directly looked into your situation, though I'm very well aware this is a concern that's pretty broad-based across the country. The Postal Service is obviously trying to create efficiencies, but have they looked into or have they adequately analyzed the impact this is going to have on the customers? Clearly, there's going to be a change in days to delivery if you're taking what came out of a plant in New Hampshire and transporting that elsewhere to neighboring states. We can best look at it through the filing of an advisory opinion, and Commissioner Poling and I have cited that a couple times. They have assured us and they have assured the committee that they are going to file an advisory opinion soon. That will give us broad latitude to look at exactly what's happening in New Hampshire and ask many more questions.
Thank you. Ms. Poling?
Thank you, Senator Hassan. Yes, I think, we have been doing the most that we can, as I've gotten into a little bit today with the authorities we have. Do I think we could do more? Yes. And I think that we are doing, as I mentioned earlier, we are pushing as hard as we can to have this advisory opinion filed. That, I think, is really the place, because all of these pieces that you all are talking about fall under this Delivering for America plan. But with that being said, we're still asking questions through the docket we have. We're still asking CHIRs, which are Chairman's Information Requests, and sometimes CIRs, which are Commission Information Requests, and we'll continue to do that. I think we have got, though, to make sure that we are getting answers from the Postal Service on what is going on. I know you all of you have been very active. I've read all of your letters.
Let me stop you there just because I have a couple more questions and running low on time. But I want to make this comment. You also should shine a light on how they are going about making these decisions. It was clear in our earlier hearing that they were not talking to employees who are not robots. They are actually really well-informed professionals who've been doing this a long time.
Yes.
And so they need to be talking to employees. They need to know how long it takes to drive from Manchester, New Hampshire, down to Boston at the height of rush hour, or right now, any time of day. They need to understand the realities on the ground, and there has been nothing convincing in their responses to us that they really have done the kind of due diligence they should do before this decision. Now, let me move on to another issue. Postmaster General DeJoy is also pushing something that you just mentioned, Ms. Fisher, his local transportation optimization plan, which would reduce how frequently trucks pick up mail from a plant. I understand that the Postal Service Inspector General opened an inquiry into how the Postal Service is implementing this plan due to concerns that the Postal Service may be working with cheaper contractors who may not be reliable and may not follow Postal Service security protocols. My office has heard concerns, for example, about the Postal Service terminating several longstanding contracts with a reliable New Hampshire-based trucking company. So has the Postal Regulatory Commission evaluated the impacts of the local transportation optimization Optimization Plan on the security and timely delivery of the mail. And we'll start with you, Ms. Polling, and then Ms. Fisher, and please try to be brief.
Yes. I would say we haven't been able to look at that in depth because, again, this is a part of the Delivering for America plan. I'm hopeful that we could get more into that data and those details. One of the features of an advisory opinion process is there is a public hearing as well. It very much mimics the legal process. So I think that's one way we could do it. I also wanted to say I greatly appreciated you sending over some of your questions ahead of time to us. That was very kind. You know, while the Postal Service is really responsible for the people and hiring the people who carry the mail, one way we can ask about that is through our annual compliance determination, if that has an impact on service and how it is delivered in a timely fashion. Okay. So that is one place we can address it.
All right, thank you, Ms. Fisher.
I understand what you're saying. I echo what Commissioner Polling said. I do know what you're talking about with the contractors. I've heard of at a separate facility a problem. It was quite rural with actually finding contractors to bid on the mail. So sometimes they had no one to pick up the mail. That's a problem. Yeah. I hope we can look into this as part of the advisory opinion process and really appreciate you raising it.
Thank you. I mean, this is drilling down on the details that matter. Again, I'm a member from another rural state too, and this is critical. Last quick question. We are just weeks away from the first mail-in ballots for the November elections going out to voters in some states. Those ballots have to be delivered in a timely way to ensure that they arrive on time and that these votes count. What can the Commission do to help ensure that the Postal Service is prepared to deliver mail-in ballots in a timely manner? And will you commit to working with me and my office in the coming months to conduct appropriate oversight here? So I'll start with Ms. Fisher and then Ms. Polling.
There really is nothing that we as the Commission can do to ensure this. I do know, though, we've asked the Postal Service a series of questions through our Delivering for a Mail Act about their plans for the election cycle. They are the same as they have been before, as expeditious as possible movement of the mail, doing all clears in the post offices and the plants at the end of each day, having employees and paying for overtime, running extra trips with the trucks. But I am very concerned about the impact of the slower delivery times with Delivering for America and how that may impede election mail delivery.
Right, and with your indulgence, Mr. Chair, I'll just get Ms. Polling to comment quickly.
Thank you so much, Senator Hassan. Yes, election mail is incredibly important. We've got to be focusing on that. One feature of the PSRA actually was creating a dashboard that the Postal Service has. One of the things the Commission recommended for that dashboard was including election mail on it. We can analyze it in a greater fashion when we get to the annual compliance report, but we will be doing all that we can to continue to ask questions through our current PI docket.
And I will just note that when I talk to Postal Service employees who are on the ground in the processing rooms, what they know at election time is when they see ballots, they prioritize them, right? And that's why some of the Postal Service Delivery for America plan is so misguided, because by putting in rigid requirements all the time, what they're doing is saying to a group of postal employees who see a stack of ballots coming in and know that there's one more group that needs to come in before the truck should go out, the Postal Service is telling them to do is just get the truck out no matter what they know is coming, when in fact, in states like mine, we've been highly successful in getting absentee ballots in on time because Postal Service employees on the ground, citizens of New Hampshire, know what's at stake and they get their job done. So again, this is about being in touch directly with employees, and I would really hope that the Commission, not just the service, will focus on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Hassan. Senator Hall, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to all of the nominees for being here today. Congratulations to you. Ms. Gonzalez, if I could just start with you. I was just looking at your resume here. It's very full. You look like someone who's very busy. You're a counsel at a law firm presently, Kaplan, Hecker and Fink. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator, that is correct.
And also a co-director at a civil rights clinic at Howard. Is that correct? Got that right?
That's correct, Senator.
So it doesn't look like to me you have a lot of free time. I imagine that you choose what you invest your time in very carefully. Is that fair to say?
Yes, Senator.
You are also on the board of a group called the Immigrant Justice Corps. Do I have that right?
Yes, Senator.
Let me just ask you about this group that you are a part of, that you're a board of directors member of, and the positions they've taken. They've taken a lot of positions. You've taken a lot of positions when it comes to immigration policy, including saying recently that this president's policy, President Biden's recent policy to restrict temporarily some of the flow across our southern border, when on a given day there are multiple thousands of illegal migrants crossing. The president said that after there are multiple thousands on any given day, he would temporarily restrict somewhat the flow, but which, by the way, I think is way too late in the game. He should be doing much more. Your group, however, has been exceptionally critical of this. They have said that any restriction of the flow across the southern border is an abhorrent betrayal of American values and is inhumane. Cruel and inhumane, to be precise. Tell me about that. Is it your view that any enforcement of our immigration law, that if we have anything other than an open border, the policy is cruel, inhumane, and an abhorrent betrayal of American values?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I do not believe that statement to reflect a request for open borders. I have never taken that position. I can tell you, I'm not familiar with that particular statement. I can tell you why I joined the organization, the board of the organization, and it is because I believe in its mission to provide quality counsel to individuals who are going through removal proceedings. It was an idea that was inspired by the late Judge Katzman's study about the efficiencies of providing such counsel to individuals who are going through removal proceedings. And I understand that the organization engages in advocacy and policy, and that if confirmed, my role as a judge would be to put any such advocacy and policy aside.
Well, let me just ask you, I don't mean to interrupt you, but my time is going to tick down here quite quickly. I just want to get clear on this. Is it your position that restrictions on the flow of illegal migrants, just to be, well, let me just ask you this more fundamentally. Do you believe we have a crisis at the southern border?
Senator, I do not believe it is my position to opine on such policy questions. I think those policy questions are very important for
But you're a member
this
of a
body.
board of directors. You're a director at an organization that has taken many such positions. So it seems to me you have taken a position. Your organization certainly has. You represent them. You're a member of that board. You choose your time very carefully, as we established just a moment ago. They say that any restriction on the flow of illegal migrants, I want to be clear about this, illegal migrants is abhorrent. It is a betrayal of American values. It's cruel and inhumane. Is that your position?
Senator, I am not familiar with that specific statement. My
June the 5th,
affiliation,
2024. It's a press release from your organization.
my affiliation with the organization does not commit me to every position it takes
So this
on
is
law
not your
and
position?
policy. No, Senator.
You disagree with this?
Senator, I joined the organization to support its mission to provide counsel to individuals going through removal proceedings.
Okay, let me ask you about that since you bring that up. You have also advocated for providing counsel, in fact, taxpayer-funded counsel, to every asylum seeker at our border. Do you know how many credibility and fear determinations the Customs and Immigration Service performed just in 2023 at the southern border?
No, Senator, I am not aware of that number.
146,000. 146,000 in 2023 alone. So you are in favor of taxpayer funding for attorneys for at least 146,000 illegals. Is that right?
Senator, I was counsel on 2 matters that advocated for the right of counsel for a limited class of non-citizens.
This is your organization that you're a member of the board of directors of. On May 27, 2022, your organization submitted this official comment to a DHS rule in which you specifically advocated for counsel to be provided at government expense to all asylum seekers. I mean, that's quite a position. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people are going to get illegal migrants are going to get government-funded attorneys under your proposal. Is that right? Is that your position?
Senator, any policy position that I have taken in my role as an advocate, I understand that I would be taking an oath to put that aside and to dedicate myself instead to the fair and impartial application of the law, and that is what I commit to you I would do in every case.
Do you still think that detaining people at the border is motivated by, I'm quoting now, motivated by financial incentives and political calculations rather than any legitimate or evidence-based purpose?
Senator, I'm not familiar with that statement.
Well, that's from another statement made by your organization in September 22nd. 2021, let me just say it again, detaining people at the border is motivated by financial incentives and political calculations rather than any legitimate or evidence-based purpose. That just seems crazy to me, to say that enforcing our laws and detaining folks who are here illegally, crossing illegally, is motivated solely by financial incentives and political calculations. Do you agree with that?
Senator, I joined the organization to support its mission to provide counsel.
Yeah,
I
I've
am
heard
not
that answer, but do you agree with this? You're a member of the board of directors of this organization that frankly has taken crazy positions over and over. I'm just wondering if you agree with these positions. So this is just a yes or a no. Do you agree that detaining people at the border is motivated solely by financial incentives and political calculations?
Senator, I'm not familiar with that position.
But do you agree with it? It's from your organization that you sit on the board of directors of. Just do you agree with it? Yes or no?
Senator, I'm not familiar with the context.
Do you agree with it? You're not going to answer my question, sounds like.
Senator,
You just say yes if you agree, that's fine, but say no if you don't. I mean, I'd like a yes or a no answer. It's a simple question. You're on the board of directors, they've issued this. Do you agree? Yes or no?
Senator, I joined the organization to support its
Oh,
mission.
goodness. This is
provide-
disappointing. I don't understand why why won't you answer me? Are you afraid of the answer that won't be popular? I mean, why are you distancing yourself from it now? Aren't you still a member of this organization? You're still on the board, aren't you?
Yes, Senator, I still serve on the board.
Okay, well, so you don't agree with any of these positions? You won't say now whether you agree or not. Is it because they're so radical?
Senator, my personal position on any policy issue would play no role in the job that I would perform as a judge if I were to be confirmed.
You've also written a paper in which you say that you don't think police ought to enforce traffic laws because it may lead to inequity. Do you remember that paper from 2023?
Yes, Senator.
Why is that? You don't want police to enforce traffic laws? I mean, it just seems to me, I'm having trouble following your positions here. You don't want the immigration laws to be enforced. You apparently think that any detention of illegals at the border is motivated by political calculations and is illegitimate, and you don't want police to be enforcing traffic laws. But you want to be a judge. How's this going to work?
Senator, the piece that you are citing documented efforts by cities along with police departments, and in some cases actually led by police departments, to move enforcement of things like hanging an air freshener from a rear view mirror to, for example, ticket by mail or parking enforcement, which would in turn free up police resources to focus on more serious enforcement.
I'm almost done, Mr. Chairman. Not just that, though. I mean, I encourage people to read the paper. In fact, I've got it right here. It's 14 pages. Mr. Chairman, I'd ask consent to enter into the record the road to driving equality. Frankly, it is full of positions that I think are just nuts. I mean, saying that things like running traffic lights, stop signs, these things can't be enforced, that the police ought to get out of enforcement of traffic laws altogether. I mean, I don't understand it. It sounds like to me you don't want enforcement at the border, you don't want enforcement of our traffic laws, you don't want police enforcement in our cities. I just question whether that is a good set of perspectives to be a judge whose job will be to enforce the law. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Rosen, recognized for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I will get right into it. I'm going to talk about access to postal service data. I want to build a little bit upon what Senator Hassan was alluding to earlier. So, Ms. Poling, as I'm sure you're aware, the Postal Service is attempting to relocate mail-out processing, excuse me, from Reno, Nevada to Sacramento, California. I'm extremely concerned by this really misguided decision and the terrible impact it's going to have on Nevadans, including our seniors, our veterans, our small business owners, our rural communities who depend on the post office for on-time service. And so as the independent regulatory agency tasked with ensuring transparency and the accountability of the Postal Service, the Postal Regulatory Commission must continue to play a key role in assessing the soundness of major operational changes, like the proposed downsizing of the Reno Processing and Distribution Center. And so as such, it's critically important that the Commission has access to the data. I'm going to say this. We must have access to the data that the Postal Service relies on to inform us of its major operational changes, so we can take a look at that. So, Ms. Poling, giving the Postal Service's continued refusal to provide this committee any specific data regarding how the Reno proposal will impact mail service delivery, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Either before or after the USPS announced it would attempt to proceed with the downsizing of the Reno, we call it the PNDC, despite opposition from Nevada's congressional delegation, our Governor, Joe Lombardo, and Nevada residents. Did Mr. DeJoy provide the commission with any specific data on how his proposal would, these changes to Reno's PNDC would impact service delivery times in northern Nevada? And if the USPS asserted that service delivery would not be impacted, did Mr. DeJoy or his staff provide written justifications explaining how this could be possible, given the substantial impediments to on-time delivery his plan would be creating?
Thank you, Senator Rosen. And I greatly sympathize and understand why you're so frustrated. I worked for rural senators right on this committee for years and constantly was working to hold the Postal Service accountable. So appreciated our conversation in the staff interview as well.
People rely on the mail in our rural areas, our veterans, our
I
seniors.
know.
It's really important.
I absolutely agree, 100%. In terms of that, you were asking about the specifics of if that information was given to the commission by Mr. DeJoy.
Yes.
No, we do not have that specific information. I will say this, and again, I actually know that you are a sponsor of the newest legislation with Chairman Peters over here. One of my favorite provisions of that legislation is asking the Postal Service for making sure they're giving us the data we need in an advisory opinion. That is essential. You're right. And right now, we have an open PI docket on the Delivering for America plan. We are able to ask a number of questions, but I do believe we can probably have access with or without this legislation. I think we will have more ability to get those answers through an advisory opinion because it is a more formal process. But I just wanted to additionally say, I think that is a really great piece that you guys put in that legislation, that you all put in this legislation. And I really think it would benefit us in our oversight.
Thank you. Postmaster DeJoy needs to show us the data, as they say.
Yes.
But Ms. Fisher and then again Ms. Poling, have you or any other members of the commission seen any weather contingency plan from USPS that include Nevada-specific data accounting for the unique weather challenges presented by snow, wildfires, severe weather that cuts off Interstate 80, of course, going over that Donner Pass from Reno to Sacramento? That's the only way, one highway to get there for days and weeks at a time. Have you seen any weather data or contingency plans for the weather data? I think we have an average per year over 30 days a year where that pass is closed.
The commission's well aware of the concerns you have, and I watched with great interest your exchange with Postmaster General during the most recent hearing. I'm amazed that you have not seen the data that you've been requesting. I fully understand the situations that weather issues can cause and then spread throughout surrounding regions. I often wonder to myself, the best way we could get at this situation that's being brought about by a change in the processing and distribution of your local mail is through an advisory opinion, as we keep mentioning, and you're a co-sponsor of legislation. The law that put into place the advisory opinion process was written in 1970. And it gives the Postal Service 100% of the power of when to determine they need to file an advisory opinion. They say when something they're going to do is going to impact the service nationwide. I wonder if maybe the regulator should be in charge of determining when the public will be impacted and then tell the Postal Service you must file an advisory opinion request.
Ms. Poling?
Yes. So, well, first to answer your question, no, we did not receive specifics on whether about the Donner Pass. But I would say, yes, I actually think even going back, you were speaking about rural America specifically, Senator. Several years ago when the Postal Service lengthened service standards, I made a point to actually draft an additional commentary speaking to rural America. And also in that, I mentioned that I think greater oversight of the advisory opinion process would be hugely beneficial. As Commissioner Fisher just mentioned, I think that it would be wonderful if there was, maybe we were more involved in that process of determining when that opinion should be filed. But I really think that the bill you all have introduced really goes in the right direction. So I am hopeful that that will help give us greater oversight and in turn give you greater transparency into what's going on.
Well, thank you. I'm not sure that Postmaster has that data, because when I asked him if he knew about how the weather was on the I-80 and how often it was closed, he actually sat there where you're sitting, I believe, Ms. Fisher, and said, why would I know that? I would say he needs to know that because he's the Postmaster General, so it is really important. And so for both of you, quickly, can I finish this question? Thank you. If confirmed, would you support a statutory requirement that USPS submit, just what you asked, major operational changes for the commission to review? And if you ultimately are tasked with issuing an advisory opinion on aspects of the postal network service changes, will you commit to collecting the data on the potential impacts, severe weather, geography, or any other conditions that may have impact on mail service reliability and performance? You can answer yes or no.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rosen. Starting to wrap this up, and I'll have to have a couple of questions for our judicial nominees here. It's all about the post office today, but that's either good or bad, depending on your. We love our mail. Ms. Aguina Gonzalez and Mr. Palmore, these questions are for you, and we'll start with Mr. Palmore, and then Ms. Gonzalez. You both have extensive appellate litigation experience, which is great. But my question for both of you is, what challenges do you anticipate facing as you shift from your role as an advocate to your role as an impartial adjudicator? And basically, how are you preparing to make that transition if you are confirmed?
Thank you for this question, Senator Peters. I had the privilege of clerking for 3 different judges at the outset of my legal career who really modeled for me what it was to be a neutral arbiter every day: the hard work, the integrity, the ability to listen to parties. And I've held that model before me throughout my career as an advocate. But of course, as an advocate, it's a fundamentally different role. My job and my ethical obligation has been to zealously represent the interests of my clients. As a judge, if I'm so fortunate to be confirmed, I would swear an oath to impartially apply the law and to be scrupulously neutral. And that's an oath that I would seek to fulfill every single day if I was fortunate enough to be confirmed to the job.
Very good.
Thank you for the question, Senator. I am very aware of the differences between the role of an advocate and the role of a judge. As an advocate, my job has been every day to zealously advocate for the positions of my client. That has been my duty. I understand that the role of a judge would be very different, and like Mr. Palmore, I've had the privilege of, throughout my career, serving for judges who have modeled that for me, who have modeled what it means to come into a case with an open mind without having prejudged the issues, and looking at the law and letting the law and the facts guide the analysis. And that is what I would aim to do every day. I would take that oath and I would take it seriously and do that every day if confirmed as a judge.
Very good. As you may know, this committee has recently focused on considering and advancing several nominations for Superior Court for the District Court of Columbia, which is the local trial court. But it handles one of the highest volumes of cases in the country. It's struggling right now to keep up with that workload because of vacancies on the bench. We have that in the Court of Appeals as well, which we've been nominated for. So how do you see the role of Court of Appeals in promoting a more effective judicial system in the district right now, which is, as I mentioned, undergoing significant challenges? Ms. Gonzalez, you want to start? And Mr. Palmer, you can take the second.
Thank you for the question, Senator, and for the opportunity to address this very important issue. I am very aware of the need for the courts to work through the backlog of cases, some of which have been pending for many years. But to balance that with the need to give every case the attention and care that it deserves, I think the way that I would do that. I would contribute to those efforts at the court would be to bring the skills and the management style that have served me well as a litigator. As a litigator, I am not unfamiliar with having a heavy caseload and having competing deadlines. And what I would do is make sure that I am setting very clear internal deadlines within chambers about when a decision will be circulated and reviewed, that I work with my colleagues to do the same for the external process, and that I play my role by responding promptly to my colleagues' circulated opinions. And that is the way that I see both the court can advance the Court of Appeals' own backlog, but also help with the Superior Court's backlog, because those opinions provide guidance to the judges on that court so that they can move their cases forward promptly and efficiently.
Very good. Mr. Palmore?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, the backlog is a big problem on the Court of Appeals because, as you mentioned, there have been vacancies for many years. And I think particularly with the docket of this court, with a heavy number of criminal cases, with family law cases involving child custody, parental rights, these cases really matter to the parties involved. They may be probably the most important thing in the world to those parties. And it may be their only encounter with the judicial system. So I, like my colleague, I have many years of a busy appellate practice where I've always had to juggle multiple matters and meet deadlines. And I would commit myself to working with my colleagues on the court to help reduce the backlog and to make sure that my own work is done expeditiously, because the parties to these cases, they need answers. They need the right answer, of course, but they need answers in an expeditious fashion.
Well, very good. Well, thank you. I want to thank each of our nominees for joining us here today and for your willingness to serve in all of these important positions that you're up for. The nominees have filed responses to biographical and financial questionnaires. Without objection, this information is going to be made part of the hearing record, with the exception of financial data, which is on file and available for public inspection in the committee offices. The hearing record will remain open until 12 p.m. tomorrow, July 26, for the submission of statements and questions for the record. This hearing is now adjourned.